Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn coming to you from Crestone, Colorado, with my co-host Nancy Hopkins of Cosmic Reality Radio. And we are excited today about what we've got to share with you. There's some important developments, some new information coming in, and a special guest who is actually physically present with us here in the beautiful San Luis Valley in Crestone, Colorado. In the meantime, good morning, Nancy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And you are doing well. So,
yeah, okay.
At least we're starting out well.
We've established important initial information.
Absolutely.
We are well. Yeah. So there's a couple of significant developments to share with you right off the bat here. Most of us are probably familiar with the movie Erin Brockovich, for which Julia Roberts won an Oscar, in which she portrayed an attorney who took on the massive corporation that was blatantly, rampantly, blithely polluting certain communities. And that law firm, Erin Brockovich's law firm, has just recently taken on the Stop 5G fight, which seems like it could be a pretty significant development. Primarily, in my mind anyway, because of her profile, because of the increased public awareness that could go with this news that, pretty much one of the most prominent activists and successful activists, defending the people against health effects, hazards from a major corporate push of a technology. That's a big story, and as I speak, I am looking for the link on that so we can explore that further with you, because there is a complete story and description of the lawsuit that we'll be sharing with you shortly. In other news, we have further clarification on the story unfolding in Australia, in which the definition of assault, the classic criminal definition of assault, is being successfully used to take down existing 5G small cell towers. And we received a message on our website from Dana in Australia, and who was giving us a clarification. She had been listening to our shows. I'm assuming Dana is a woman, but it could be a man. Regarding the Ray Broomhall method that's being used in Australia to stop cell towers. And I want to own up to having described that process as going directly to the police and filing criminal assault charges. And the information that's been brought forward now lets us know that, in fact, the assault charges which are brought against the telecom companies and councils are brought through a civil court, not a criminal court. This means the police are not required to lay charges. In other words, if you go to a lawyer, not the police, to bring the case. And the case is for financial damages. Now, civil courts usually require a lower burden of proof. So you need only find a doctor who can testify that the cell tower could harm you. And you can do this before the cell tower is installed, because even threatening somebody with harm meets the definition of assault. So it is even easier to bring this case because the police are not involved. Have you heard more details about this kind of process, Nancy?
No, I'm glad for the clarification there, because I thought that he had put it through criminal court, that's how they were getting around. They tried the civil court, and they got, you're going to have to pay we'll stop, but you're going to have to pay until we can continue, which is, millions and millions of dollars to the client, his client.
Right.
And then he began talking about the assault, and for some reason I thought that that they had gone to criminal court. But that again is Australia. I wasn't so concerned about what Australia was doing, except that they had brought to my attention the assault charges.
Right.
In America, I think it's a little different, because first off, most people don't have the money to go and find a lawyer and get a doctor and go through all that. If any of that's going to happen, it has to be more of a class action suit. And that is, what I wanted to do was to make a statement, okay, that, yes, call the police and say, this guy right up there is, putting me under assault.
Yeah.
And just file the report. Because if you, in the small town, like I'm looking at it from my small town, right? If you're trying to get attention of I'm actually in the county, but if you're trying to get the attention of the county, stop this stuff, you're going to get more attention if all of a sudden there's a commotion in a community where everybody in the community is filing police reports.
Right.
That was is to get, because I can go door to door around here and say, sign this petition thing that says, this is assault, blah, 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 but I might not be on the street when this happens. And if everybody, sees it and then just makes this police report, then as soon as you start getting police reports, then sure, that maybe they'll tell you, well, it's not our problem, but I don't care. I'm going to hound you. I'm going to make you go to the county and say, what in the hell is the matter with people?
Yeah.
That was, so I wasn't looking at it, but I can understand, and I'm glad for the clarification from them. I appreciate that. But like I say, it was more of civil unrest. Mm-hmm. We're not going to let you do this. And, if the first line of defense is call the police, then call the police. Make a report. They're not going to put you in jail for making a false police report.
Yeah, not yet anyway.
Not yet. I don't think they're going to, because there are so many changes. I mean, even in America, worldwide, there's incredible changes. Who was I listening to? Gosh, I can't even remember who it was, but they were talking about the yellow vests and how French police have gone and said to their bosses, we can't deal with this.
Yeah.
Right? And you've got people in Berlin walking in the streets, and a 3-lane highway in the middle of a city, and as far as you can see in either direction there's people, and they're protesting vaccinations. I don't care what you're protesting, you are taking charge of your own reality in doing this. And I mean, all over the world, there's a lot of things that are happening. In Sweden, in Switzerland, they're going to the streets. So it's like we have to make the people who are in leadership realize, no, we're serious about this.
Yeah.
You can't put us down. We're going to keep yelling at you. Squeaky horn or squeaky wheel gets the oil. That kind of thing. We have to become active in our own homes, our own neighborhood. And if it's done neighborhood by neighborhood, and your whole, constituency is starting to file police reports on assault charges because linemen are getting up on a ladder, well, then you better look at what we're talking about. We're not all crazy.
No, some of us, but not all. Yeah.
Well, I'd rather be crazy than normal, because normal's really screwed up.
Yeah, normal is pretty whacked out these days.
Oh, God. But no, so just be aware that when I was speaking of, actually calling the police, it was for my neighborhood, for your neighborhood, for Americans, just to get your voice out there. That it's not going to cost you anything. You're not calling a lawyer. You're making a police report. And assault is assault. It can be criminal or civil.
Right.
Yes, it's true that you would have to prove more in a criminal court, but hey, I could right now prove in a criminal court. Give me a jury.
Well, it sounds like the strategy that's been successfully used in Australia by Ray Broomhall has been through this lower burden of proof in a civil setting.
Yes, because it's money. They're going directly after the money.
That makes sense. And, the reports are that, more than 1,000 small cell towers were taken down, and like another 900 or so prevented from being put up in the first place in Australia using this approach. And that as a result, the major telecom company in Australia has backed down on the whole rollout of 5G, which has got to count as the biggest victory so far, in my mind.
Absolutely, and because they said we are shutting down the deployment because of health concerns.
Yeah, and that's actually go ahead.
Well, in reality, it was probably the threat of all these lawsuits that are going to take your money. But I don't care as long as you said it. You gave credence. The chief operating officer was asked by a reporter. I've said this before. What's the matter with these crazy people? And he said, I don't think they're irrational. So they did get the point that there is something here that we're talking about. But it was, let's face it, money always makes a difference. And you got somebody out there that every time you start to put up a cell tower is suing you for assault. So yeah, it's easier to stop now. And, these people, the telecommunications people on the ground, these companies, they're going on the basis of what they're being told by others. But the others are telling you to do this and it's safe and do all this because they've got an agenda that you certainly would not agree with if you understood the full implications. And that was another indicator. Maybe they're waking up because we've said from the beginning that the real change comes when the people inside the organizations begin to go, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah, well, when you consider, the 1996 Telecom Act under the Clinton administration, which effectively prohibited suing the telecom companies over cell towers about health effects, right? But now you've got a major U.S. ally, Australia, stopping the 5G rollout specifically because of health effects. So that's got to really cut the legs out to some major extent, I would think, of this argument, that's being made, this what we ran into in Taos, where, you've got hundreds of concerned citizens showing up physically at the Taos County Commissioners meeting. You've got expert testimony. You've got all this. And the people on the commission are just going, well, according to, the World Health Organization, they just cite a couple of, blanket dismissals of huge science on the issue of the harmful health effects. And, blithely go their way and vote the corporate line. So that's becoming less and less tenable. I don't see how they're going to continue to be able to get away with that. And when we look at this recent development with the Erin Brockovich situation, I've got a link I've just shared with you on that. This is from the People's Initiative Foundation. The article I've shared with you comes from the Activist Post, and we'll have this up on our YouTube of this show when the YouTube goes up. The link will be with it, and everybody can check this out. In the meantime, if you just wanted to do a search term on Erin Brockovich 5G, you'll probably pull up this article. I'll read the first few paragraphs on it. This is by B.N. Frank of Activist Post. Long before Ms. Brokovich became the subject of a blockbuster movie starring Julia Roberts, she was just another determined activist trying to stop a corrupt corporation from poisoning residents of an American community. Unfortunately, corruption like this never seems to end. The race for 5G and all it requires could eventually expose the entire U.S. population to dangerous levels of electromagnetic radiation, also known as electrosmog, as well as creating the potential for many other kinds of serious issues and events according to various credible sources. And then they list links to all the science. He then thanks activist Liz Barris with the People's Initiative Foundation for encouraging Ms. Brokovich's law firm to join them in fighting against 5G and wireless information. And they're directly addressing how under Americans with Disabilities Act and the Telecom Act, it prohibits environmental effects from blocking antennas and towers, but has been interpreted by governments and courts to also include health, meaning you cannot use health effects as a reason to block a cell tower or antenna. But the Roy Broomhall approach actually allows you to take a doctor's opinion, to the court and have, damages. And that's when they get scared. When you've got the lower burden of proof for civil courts and medical opinions regarding the harmful EMF, and that, my understanding anyway, given how successful they've been, how many cell towers have come down, how many other towers have been prevented from going up, is that this is effective. That this has not only brought all these towers down, but has stopped the rollout in Australia. So let's see if we got something else to. They're talking about the difference between this lawsuit and the one from the Erin Brockovich film. Is that one was a toxic tort, legal firm tort, against a company for damages, which is why the firm took the case on contingency, meaning no upfront money because the attorneys had a huge sum from PG&E, the company that lost that suit, that they would collect if they won. Now, this lawsuit that they're bringing is in the interest of the public good. They're not suing a company for damages. It's in the interest of the public good. We are just suing the FCC, the ADA, challenging the Telecom Act to retain our basic rights to life and for the legal violations, including constitutional violations, that are happening with 5G. So there's both a New York firm and a California firm. You can check the details on the link we're providing. So they are seeking, they've got a GoFundMe campaign looking to support their efforts there. And the article goes on to have the usual good links to all the hard science on wireless radiation exposure, health effects, the other lawsuits on the issue that are also underway. So that's the good news that we're looking at, and I've got a special guest in the wings here. I don't know if he's had his cup of coffee yet. He's actually physically present with us today in our home studio in southern Colorado, and that is the noted documentary filmmaker William Gazecki, who made such noted films as Waco, Rules of Engagement, and Crop Circle's Quest for Truth. He's Academy Award-nominated, Emmy-winning director, well-established, respected documentary filmmaker, and is working with us on a separate project here, one which I think I shared with you last week, Nancy, or maybe the week before.
Yeah.
Right, having to do with our friend Elvis. So I'm just checking in. Okay.
Well, before we introduce him, I could play. It's only a 6-minute video, but it's extremely fascinating because it's called The Magic Frequency. And it's only 6 minutes, and it was a video. But what it does is it shows how they've discovered how to eradicate cancer like leukemia using electromagnetic stimulation, creating a resonance that causes the cells to essentially implode. And why this is so important is because they're showing us what they've done in a positive way using the same energy that, if it's not tuned correctly, will be damaging. So it's proving at the cellular level the effects of electromagnetic energy on cells. And we're talking about the leukemia cell, just, you'll hear it in the tape. So it's only 6 minutes, and we can talk a little bit about it while your guest gets ready, or we can go directly to him otherwise.
Yeah, let's go with the video. That sounds good.
Okay.
We need a little more time here anyway.
Right. Okay, here we go.
So now we're searching for the magic frequency. And we start with 100 hertz, and we look through the microscope to see if anything's happening. We watch for 5 minutes. Nothing happens. We try hundreds and hundreds of frequencies, if not thousands, until we find the magic combination. Because we believed there just had to be a better way. There had to be a better way. And we think we may have found it. I have here 2 identical tuning forks, both tuned to the note A, the note an orchestra tunes to. These forks are both made to vibrate 440 times per second. We say their frequency is 440 hertz. If I tap this fork, putting little pulses of energy into it, the second fork will also vibrate in sympathy. And if I silence this fork, we just may hear the other singing its tone. We say that I'm inducing a sympathetic resonant vibration in the second fork. It only works because both forks are tuned to the exact same frequency. Now, many of us have seen this very charming young man on the internet who shatters crystal glasses with his powerful voice. But if you watch him carefully, you'll see that first he taps the glass with his finger and listens. The glass sings its natural resonant pitch. Then he takes a deep breath and sings a loud, long note. He induces a resonant vibration in the crystal glass. The vibration grows larger and larger and larger until the glass is shattered. On the other end of the scale, we have a giant bridge made out of concrete and steel, a suspension bridge, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Cars and trucks and buses are going over it every day. And unfortunately, where they built this bridge, there was a steady wind blowing across it. And one day this wind induces a small vibration in the bridge, hardly noticeable. But the frequency of the vibration matches the resonant frequency of some part of the bridge. And the vibration gets larger and larger and larger until the bridge collapses into the river below. A destructive resonant frequency. So on one end of the scale, we have a giant concrete and steel bridge destroyed by resonance. And on the other, we have a small crystal glass shattered. So maybe we could shatter something even smaller, something really small, something you would need a microscope to see. Maybe we could shatter a living microorganism. So maybe we could change a biological living liquid crystal with a special electronic signal. But in order to do that, we would need some kind of device. So we search the U.S. patent database, and we find this invention by a physician, Dr. James Bear of Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's called a resonant frequency therapy device, and its purpose is to induce a resonant vibration in a living organism or cell. If I put in say 100 hertz, out will come 100 pulses per second. If I put in 200 hertz, we'll get 200 pulses. So now we're searching for the magic frequency. And we start with 100 hertz, and we look through the microscope to see if anything's happening. We watch for 5 minutes. Nothing happens. So we try 101 hertz. We look through the scope for 5 minutes, and nothing happens. So we try 102, 103, and so on. Over the course of 15 months, we try hundreds and hundreds of frequencies, if not thousands, until we find the magic combination. The answer is you have to have 2 input frequencies, one low, one high, and the higher frequency must be 11 times the lower. It's what we musicians would call the 11th harmonic. And when we add the 11th harmonic, we begin to shatter microorganisms like a crystal glass. These are the first videos taken. We showed these videos to our friends in the biology department. They said they hadn't seen anything quite like it. Seems to be a new phenomenon. These organisms are being shattered by our electronic signals. We now know that cancer is vulnerable between the frequencies of 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz. So now we attack leukemia cells. Leukemia cell number 1 tries to grow a copy of itself, but the new cell is shattered into dozens of fragments and scattered across the slide. Leukemia cell number 2 then hyperinflates and also dies. Leukemia cell number 3 then tries to make another cancer cell. The new cell is shattered and the original cell dies.
Okay, so they're talking about doing good things with electromagnetic energy at the molecular level. But it's proof that this concept that cellular molecular damage can be happening because of electromagnetic signals is absolutely proven. Oddly enough, when I played this last night on the Cosmic Reality Show, Walt Silva knew all about the equipment that they had used to create this. And he said, actually, and he goes into this long explanation as to why they don't need 2 signals, that they can do it with one, and blah, 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 blah. You know, I mean, it was like, okay, you know, but I just wanted to, because it was the best proof in a very, I mean, if you look at the video, and the link will be down there, if you look at the video and see these cells of leukemia trying to duplicate and you know, well, that can happen to your other cells in your body if it's a resonance that's destructive versus being destructive only to leukemia or only to cancer. You know, different types of cancer, because every one of them is going to have a different frequency. But the same can be said about something that is not tuned specifically for a given, and very specifically, these signals that you're getting are all over the chart. You know, there's different types of them coming at you all at once, and it's tremendous amount of force. And it's the stuff that's damaging, not, I mean, both of them are damaging if you look at it from the standpoint of leukemia, but from the standpoint of the human being, that's healing. But if you're killing cells that, you know, you need to survive, well, that's kind of damaging. So. Yeah.
Wow. So, in terms of the detrimental health effects of 5G, are we looking at this as something that, because we know, you know, the power of frequency, are we looking at a tie-in there?
Oh, absolutely. What they're using is an electromagnetic signal that they have is very low powered, that they have adjusted strictly for the frequency of, in this case, leukemia. And when you have, and he showed you by demonstrating with the tuning forks, it's called resonant frequency. And what happens is that frequency starts up, and anything that is closely matching that frequency in its own energy field begins to also vibrate. But if it's not supposed to be vibrating, then it self-destructs. Okay, so and when you're talking 5G, you're talking about an electromagnetic signal coming in that inevitably is not only able to heat your body because of the friction between the signal coming in and everything that's happening in your cells, but it can actually, I mean, think about it. They could tune, if they can tune this very, it's a kind of a complicated thing to get the energies down low enough to be able to do what they're doing in this particular video. But if you've got an electromagnetic system that you can put out a signal, then you can modulate that frequency. The other guys know this. You can modulate that. This is what we're talking about. It's a weapon system, and it's been out there. They've been doing this. You modulate it so it puts out a frequency that essentially is the same frequency of the virus that gives you the flu. So all of a sudden, your body is starting to feel like it's flu, but it's not being caused because of a flu virus. It's because they know what the virus of flu has a frequency to do, and it starts to do the same thing in your body. That's why you'll have an outbreak of some weird thing someplace, and nobody knows where it came from. You know, everybody all around you all of a sudden has got, you know, coughing and flu and cysts, and then it goes away. I'm telling you, we've known for a long time that they have the capability of being able to do this. And all of this, all I'm saying with this 6-minute thing is this absolute concrete, scientific, visual, proof that what we're telling you an electromagnetic signal can do to your cells, to microorganisms in the soil. You know, do you know that there's actually a patent out on using electromagnetic energy to kill bugs? A patent.
Wow. Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
That's why when I say the microorganisms in the soil are dead, this is why. You know, I mean, there's other things that would do it. The fact that there's a heat up and the bugs don't have the structure in their body like our skins and stuff to ward off some of it, so they're more vulnerable to these signals. But you have somebody who's got an electromagnetic signal patent to kill bugs, microorganisms. So you might be able to find some way to protect yourself, you know, go get into an underground tube or something. But you can't protect the rest of nature from 5G.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at, you know, with, as we know, bee colony collapse. We featured a documentary clip on a previous show in which they pointed out that, okay, bees have been around for millions upon millions of years. They have dealt with, you know, huge climate change cycles over the many, many millenniums. They've dealt with, you know, all kinds of environmental threats, and their natural, you know, immune system and resiliency has pulled them through. The bees have been with us all this time. Now there is devastating collapse, colony collapse, where bees are on the brink of becoming an endangered species, and us closely following them because, of course, they're key pollinators for our food supply. And yet, okay, well, what's the new factor that suddenly, after hundreds of millions of years of viability and durability, what's the new factor that is killing the bees? And here it is, you know, that this is, when you combine it with everything else, you combine it with the toxic chemicals being used, you combine it with all the environmental challenges, but you add the EMF, and that's the killer. That's the unique new factor for the first time in the history of the planet that is, you know, lethal. to the bees and and the biosphere and so many other microorganisms. And this is one of the things that we keep emphasizing to people is, look, you can protect yourself to some extent against EMF and Wi-Fi. We're going to get into some of that with our guest here in a minute. But unless we stop this, you can't protect the biosphere against what's happening. So,
and what you're talking about is 4G. It's not even 5G. It's the 4G system, the 3G system, the 2, the 1. We can show, you can look at it, that the bees started to drop off when they got to the, by the third, definitely, but it was indicated in the second. When they got the second generation, they went to the third, and so it drops off, right? The second dropped off, but then they came back. And then they added 3G, and boom, they drop off again. But then they came back, and then they got 4G, they can't come back.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. And this is actually a good moment for me to bring on our special guest this morning. And that's my good friend William Gazecki, who is a noted documentary filmmaker, Academy Award nominated, Emmy winning for various received, well-known documentaries. His initial career began as a talented record producer and sound mixer, earning 3 Emmy nominations for Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere. Very noted for his documentary film Waco, The Rules of Engagement. He is a recipient of the International Press Academy's Golden Satellite Award for Outstanding Feature Documentary for his second featured documentary, Reckless Indifference, and also directed what is regarded as pretty much the definitive documentary on the crop circle phenomenon, Crop Circle's Quest for Truth. And we are really pleased to have him on board with the Sacred Academy on our documentary project on the hidden spiritual life of Elvis Presley. So, William, welcome.
Morning. Good morning, Michael. You're embarrassing me with all the accolades. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. One thing I was thinking as you were talking is that something that a documentary filmmaker gets to do is spend their time. I get to spend my time looking for the truth. And we don't all have that opportunity. So I think that, I have over time managed to amass some knowledge about protecting ourselves, basically. Protecting myself from spurious electromagnetic radiation has been an objective and an interest of mine for a long time. And so I've got my own sort of product line and personal technique or protocol, I guess you'd call it, for what I do in my life to protect myself from radiation and, my cell phone and things like that. So I'm interested in this work, and I think the 5G activism is certainly a courageous effort and one that.
Okay, something happened. We just lost you. William? Okay.
Are we back?
You're back.
Good.
Just a message here. There's a lot of background. I don't know if you're moving the mic or what, but there's background noise.
That was me, Nancy. I was just trying to improve the positioning of the microphone to William. So we're good. We can roll on.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So the whole issue of personal defense against spurious EMF is something that I have been concerned about in my life for a long, long time. And I think it's really good that people are starting to wake up to this, because it's a real health challenge. It's a real health. I can't remember the word. It's something to protect. It's an assault, essentially. So I think this whole new legal angle is a very good idea. I did work on a film back in 2008 called Vanishing of the Bees. And I did not know anything about bees or the threats to bees or, bee behavior other than what I learned, in grade school, the bee dance and, bees go out to flowers and collect the pollen and they come back and tell each other where the good flowers are and, all of that stuff that we learned in school. What I didn't know was how important bees are to our survival, really, and what a huge role they play in providing us with our food and where we would be in this world without bees. I had no idea that without bees we'd be eating gruel, rice and water every day. We wouldn't have all of our fruits. We wouldn't have, many of the things that we treasure as sources of plant nutrition. We would have without bees. And so Vanishing of the Bees is what came about. I did not direct it. I was the editor on it. I was the picture editor and story consultant. And I had a very good. I worked on it for a year, and learned a lot about colony collapse disorder, which is this now chronic problem with bee colonies, bee hives, really around the world. Although at the time we were focusing primarily on the United States. And beekeeping is interesting in that it's not a corporate pastime. There are unlike farming or many of the other food-related industries, beekeeping has never become corporate-centric. It's never been come under the aegis of corporations or large businesses. Even though there are very large beekeepers in the world, they're all families. They're all local, and they all are small business owners. And I didn't know that either. And they're the ones that are really struggling. They are the ones that have the knowledge to care for our bees, and they're the ones that are really struggling to maintain their hives and keep our food delivered, essentially. And they really work themselves, to the bone, so to speak. I mean, they work all year round, even in the off times when their bees are in hiatus, in hibernation. And it's been a terrible, terrible mystery and devastating challenge for them to deal with their colonies collapsing and the bees and all their, millions of bees dying at once. And that film, Vanishing of the Bees, was produced and developed and produced in response to and as a result of this colony collapse disorder. And it has not abated. They found some causes in that period of time, and nobody wants to hear. The government and all of the powers that be, the corporations that manufacture toxins, the corporations that manufacture harmful technologies like 5G, just are not interested in hearing these arguments. And it's that alone is cause for tremendous concern and activism and protesting. So I am so glad that bees have become more of a factor in public awareness for harmful products, harmful systems to ourselves. Because the little bee, they are so cute. I actually, as a child, stepped in a beehive twice and was stung. If I had been allergic, I would have died. But unfortunately, I wasn't. But I've been stung by bees thousands of times, so I'm completely bee paranoid. But I've learned what sweet, cute little creatures they are and what sophisticated societies they have and sophisticated processes they have to make their honey and to propagate, and how important they are to our food. So anything to do with the bees, I think we should...
William, let me interrupt you for a second, because do you know that they've actually proved that if you add a cell phone signal to a hive, within 10 days you have colony collapse?
Oh, I wouldn't surprise me at all.
That was a 2009 study that came out, and it was, I don't have the paper in front of me, but yes, They did a very controlled testing of it, and absolutely this is just one of many, but they absolutely proved that in 10 days, the hive was gone.
I hear you. No, and it's funny, because that test was done right after this film was finished.
Yeah, so, I noticed that.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't surprise me a bit. Bees are very sensitive, and again, that's another call for anything that affects the bees. We should pay attention to and completely change our behavior. And that this is one of those things there that we as a human species really have to start becoming not just aware of, but taking action on. It's
Well, are you aware of the Shungite bee project?
I am actually a little bit, but Michael told me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I was about to jump in if you didn't first, Nancy, on that, which is, of course, we're always trying to give people the hard information about the dangers, but also the good news about not only the effective legal actions to stop 5G, but the power of what's happening with Shungite. So as long as we're rolling on that, can you roll on with that? I'll
just cover it real quickly. 3 nuggets of Shungite, just the 3 raw nuggets, were put on. There was actually 2 hives in the first year, and they put the excuse me the 3 nuggets right at the entrance of the door. I believed that it was electromagnetic that was killing the bees, and I was screaming for a beekeeper to listen to me. And Derek Condon actually said, well, let me try this stuff. Went and got his own Shungite and put it there on the hive. And it was stunning. It was stunning what happened. To put it in very, very succinct terms, these 2 hives of 50,000 bees went to over 1 million in 11 weeks, and there was never one death from any kind of a disease or any abandonment of at all. And this is the 3rd year that we've done the same situation, and every year it's even better. So I, being on radio, we got Derek on and we started talking about it, and other beekeepers started listening to us, got their own Shungite, started it up, and now there are people reporting to us from all over the world that they're getting the same response. And it's because what happens to the bees, they actually go up to the Shungite nuggets and they rub against them. They take out particles of Shungite, and Shungite is actually the smaller the piece, the more energetic it becomes. Okay, and so they're wearing little Shungite dust on themselves. So when they go out into the yard and into the fertilizer and all that stuff, they do have a certain amount of protection because Shungite will neutralize toxins, but they're also being protected from the electromagnetic field. Okay, because as soon as the electromagnetic field gets within the range of the bee, the Shungite field attenuates it, changes that field so it's no longer damaging. They can get confused sometimes if they're in a huge amount of it, but to make sure that even in the worst electromagnetic situation you can get, let's try putting bees in the worst electromagnetic we could do, which was right under those huge power lines, the ones that go forever that look like, robotic creatures. And still, the bees are fine, even under all of that electromagnetic because of the Shungite. And then when they come back into the hive, they'll rub up against it again to clean themselves off. We think of it as like taking a little bath there before they even go into the hive. But when they go into the hive, they've got it on them, and so now the entire hive is being filled with essentially Shungite powder. So we know that it works. We know that at least one university is studying it. We have seen, somebody said, how do you know if you've lost a bee? Why do you tell they're dead? Well, you can tell they're dead because they're dead around the hive, but if you've got sick bees, you see diarrhea. You'll see staining in the lower tray. And, we've never in 3 years had one loss from any of the normal things that kill bees. So this is why we're so excited about it, and why so many, people that hear about it and they see the results we're getting. It costs you nothing. Go get 3 nuggets, put it on there. Now we have other things that we do too. There's paint, Shungite paint, and things that even more protection, but it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and that is another thing I wanted to explore with William when I had been telling him about Shungite's protection against EMF and Wi-Fi, and I've actually given him, since he got here, the Shungite S4 stickers from Cosmic Reality for the back of his cell phone and also the back of his laptop. And he'd been using another technology, some other powder in a sticker. And what was that called?
Well, there's two things I've been using for quite some time, both of which have very strong science behind them. They're not woo-woo. And one is called the Altera Rare Earth products. It's AULTERRA, Altera.com. And the Altera product is a rare earth mineral that's been refined, very similar to Shungite in that regard. And it's been powderized and refined into various products that you can apply. One is a sticker, similar to your Shungite sticker, that I first found out about, about 4 or 5 years ago. And they have done a lot of science on it, and it's a product that definitely reduces mobile wireless phone radiation. It's a powder that's only mined in a couple of places. The man, I actually met the man who owns the company around the time that I discovered the products. And he told me a story of how Apple had used the Altera materials in their very first iPhone when they made their submission to the FCC to get the phone approved. And, of course, what they submitted to the FCC had massively reduced radiation because of this product put inside of the phone. They didn't use the product when they manufactured the phone for public consumption, of course. So they were basically lying and cheating. But they got away with it. And, in fact, it's the Altera material that allowed them to do it. And that was a little story he told me as we were sitting and chatting about the history of this material.
Okay, may I just point out something to you that you may know, but they're being sued right now. There's a class action suit against them for that very thing, lying. Good.
Well, they did. And I don't remember this man's name. I could find it probably on the Altera site. But I just shook my head and just thought, because then the conversation then went on to, well, if they knew enough to use it to lie, why can't they use it to tell the truth? Why can't they actually put it in the phones or tell the public that this is a valid product? And that's really where the rubber meets the road for the millions of us consumers is why are we not afforded the same protections they afford themselves for their own benefit, their own profit, really.
Well, of course, to do that, to put it in the phones would be to admit that, first of all, the phones in and of themselves exceed the accepted standards of radiation, and to imply that there's health effects. And, of course, they open that door, and then they're going to be dealing with massive lawsuits, which now they are. Even despite the apparent cheating on, putting stuff into the devices to lower the readings.
Well, let's just go back to what Mark told us last week, because this lawsuit resulted from the Chicago Tribune's testing of a series of different types of cell phones, and the iPhone and a 7 they were testing, and also the Samsungs, the current Samsungs, were 500 times above the SAR level. When the SAR is the limit, what the limit is, it's an SAR reading. It was 500 times over that. And Mark, who's a technician, an electronic technician, said there is no way that they could have built those phones and gone that high over the SAR. It had to have been built into the phone. Okay, so they have knowingly from the get-go, because even the early ones, don't have what's going on now, 500 times over the SAR limit, which is too low to begin with because it's based on 1990 information. And you've got a situation where these people have actually built these things knowing that it was way above a SAR level that is already damaging. It's too high to begin with. So this is intentional, and that's what they've got him on. They can't go after him because of the current federal laws, which are also being, under attack. But they couldn't go after him that way, and so they went after him for fraudulent advertising, breaking the SAR, lying. Basically, it's flat out lying. So, as soon as that. The Tribune went out, I think, on the 21st, and on the 29th, there were three filings in 3 different states by this team of lawyers. I don't know who they are. I haven't really looked into who these people are. But in 3 states, they simultaneously went after not only Apple, but Samsung. And that was not on the 9th. So in 8 days, they had the suit ready. So there's people out there that know what's happening, and they're even if we don't know who they are right now. So good things are happening. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to fill that information in.
Yeah, really adds a lot. I also use, besides the Altera products, I also use a case called Pong, P-O-N-G, pongcase.com. And this is yet another tested, bona fide electronic shielding device that's built as a case. It's a custom fit case for all the different phone models. I have an older iPhone, a 6, but I've been using the Pong from day one. And so I combined the Altera and the Pong and now the Shungite all into one package. And the Pong is like any other case, it looks the same. It's fairly sleek, but it also has, measured output. Measured impact on the EMF output of the cell phone. So I would not even, and I like everybody else these days, I never put the phone to my ear, and I would not have a phone without some kind of protection. To have a cell phone these days, especially the big, powerful ones, without some kind of EMF protection is really not a good idea. And I think people should be aware of that.
Well, the other thing to be aware of is that 5G just brings in a completely radically higher level of exposure, and that having a Shungite S4 sticker from Cosmic Reality on your cell phone, that's great. That is really important, really helpful. 3G and 4G, but the rollout of 5G is bombarding us. If you live in an urban environment. Well, great. Okay, you're not holding a cancer-causing device to your head, and the Shungite sticker is attenuating the effect of the Wi-Fi. But 5G, the cellular damage from 5G, the way it is being blanketed in schools, libraries, businesses, you turn on your cell phone to pick up a wireless signal. Gee, where can I get good wireless? And the readouts are like, oh, which of the 30 different 5G, frequencies, sources that I can choose from, that I'm being currently bombarded with? Well, who's going to get to cause my cancer today? Is kind of like the choice you're making of the 30, within your 2-block area that are reading up on your cell phone. And, that's why on Radio 5G, we're letting people know about these important self-protection devices, but also just saying, hey, 3G, 4G, the EMF and Wi-Fi, Shungite has been shown to be effective, in attenuating this. Please, everybody understand, 5G is just a radically different game entirely. This is about the biosphere. This is about bee colony collapse and the vanishing of major food supplies. This is about documented health effects on human beings as these frequencies are just being blanketed in your neighborhood. So at the same time, we're not going to ignore the protection devices that you can put in place. We've all got to do our best, but let's not pretend it's like, oh yeah, 5G is a shame, but I've got my sticker on the back of my phone. You've got to have the sticker on the back of your phone, but it's not going to stop this. What's going to stop it is the kind of action that's being taken by Roy Broomhall. The 5G Crisis Summit.com has all these really excellent talks by a number of different experts, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Roy Broomhall, and many others, detailing not only the scientific evidence but the successful strategies that are being implemented to prevent the rollout. So we're always trying to cover it all. So we're coming up on our break here. This has been the first hour of Radio 5G, and we are going to let you hear some beautiful music for our hour break, and see you in about 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host Nancy Hopkins and our special guest William Gazecki, and we are addressing good news and also just the overview we always try to keep everybody up to date on in terms of the absolute urgency of the movement to stop the 5G rollout while providing what individual protection we can for ourselves and our families from the harmful effects of EMF and Wi-Fi, while recognizing that's not going to be enough, because even if you lock yourself in your house and paint the walls with Shungite paint and put yourself in a Shungite rubber suit and don't go outside and use a cell phone with a Shungite sticker and a laptop with a Shungite sticker. What are you going to do when bee colony collapse causes massive food shortages and the biosphere is collapsing around us? That's the level of the threat that we are facing. Nancy, did you want to jump in on any of the things we've been sharing over the last few minutes?
No, I think we should let William talk. Go, William.
Okay.
One thing I want to say a couple of things. One was about children, and the fact that as in all cases, especially anything medical, children are more vulnerable. They're just more susceptible to any kind of influence in their young, vulnerable growth process. And they all want cell phones. They all want to have the latest, and they watch movies, and a lot of their lives are and that's a social issue that really is not what this conversation is about. But kids and cell phones are kind of bonded at this point. So this kind of protection is even more important for that whole aspect of the younger generations and impacting them, the cancer challenges and all of that. So I think another way to also, in that regard, to look at it is the burden on society that we're ignoring by allowing 5G to propagate. Because you start adding up the numbers of healthcare issues and treatment and all of that, it just becomes I think the benefits actually are outweighed. If you call just because I can download a movie in 10 seconds, a valid benefit, are outweighed by the long-term health risks. So I think people need to own that. The other thing I came across in my research today, my work, is the EMF Academy. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's really an interesting little piece of business. It's some sort of organization and website all about EMF issues and research. They have a 5G section. They have a recommended products. And so that looks like a really good resource for current news and networking and things of that nature. So it's emfacademy.com.
So we've got, by the way, to just let everybody remember that at Radio 5G we do have our own website, which has many resources listed, and that you can go to 5G-KNOW.com, 5G-KNOW.com. And on our resources page, we've got activist groups and informational websites and resources listed state by state for the United States, and also many overseas resources. And it's more than we can really keep up with day to day because of how rapidly the movement is growing and how bury your head in the sand and just pile on layers of denial and propaganda and feel-good commercials are not working. There's always going to be a portion of the population that is so exhausted and dumbed down that they don't get the message. But the 20, 30, 40% who do get the message and are not going to simply stand by while their children are assaulted, while the list of documented health dangers, from brain tumors to diabetes to genetic disorders, reproductive disorders, increased miscarriages, psychiatric effects on young people. People are just saying, no, we're actually not going to sit still for this. And we actually are going to take back our power, our sovereign power as citizens, work with our local governments and county commissioners and the laws that allow you to sue under the definitions of assault, which is such an effective strategy used by Roy Broomhall in Australia. And by the way, we do want to encourage people also to go to the 5G Crisis Summit .com, and there are excellent talks there with also the PDFs available on the Roy Broomhall strategy for exactly how you can implement that in your community. And it's a very careful protocol, step by step, that's been very successful, because we do have rights, we do have strategies and actions we can take. So that's what we're here for at Radio 5G, to help everybody stay in tune with that. And let's see.
Something I was asking Michael about earlier is there a way to measure the EMF around you and to really get a handle on how much am I at risk in your car, in your home, your workspace? And there are some things out there that are available. A little pricey, but I just think that's something I'm interested in. I want to start measuring where I am and what's around me, and find out, if it changes like one part of the room to another, or, things like that. So I'm looking at something here called the Tri-Field EMF meter. So I don't know if it's one of the.
Well, maybe, Nancy, that's something that you could comment on in your experience with measuring EMF as attenuated by Shungite.
Well, the trimeter is the one that you hear about out there. I had, when I started this back in the 80s, I was using a trimeter, and it basically is just reading the electromagnetic fields around you.
Okay.
For some reason, you gotta mute, Mike. I'm getting a feedback. So, but they've got new ones out there that I am not familiar with, Michael. They have got all sorts of different frequencies that apparently they can pick up. Okay, and we've got people who actually have bought these things and will walk around to different places, like in a city, and and they're showing these things off the chart. When Mark Steele was at this conference room in I believe it was a government facility, he was giving a talk when Sasha Stone, who was there, it was the event in London, the Apocalypse Now 5G event in London, and Mike and Sasha held out the meter, and Mark goes over, and it was outrageously high in that chamber room. So if you want to get spooked, go get your meters. But get your meters so that when because I've had people that are doing this also, they'll be trying to explain to somebody about the dangers, and they pull out that meter and they start showing the readings, and all of a sudden you got their attention. But the 5G, I don't know if there's actually a meter out there. I assume there might be, but I don't know. So, William, as you're looking at these things, can you report back to Michael so that we might be able to answer this more efficiently?
I will. Yeah, this is one of my little hobbies, is checking these things out. I'm a little bit of a techie nerd, so
We love techie nerds.
Yeah, I'd like to find, that's a really good idea, by the way, to find something that is actually 5G sensitive, an actual 5G meter. Would really be beneficial. So if I find something, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me just point out here that when you're using Shungite, and Shungite actually has been used by the reason I found it was because it was being used by the Russian military to shield electronic equipment, and that's how I got introduced to it. And the thing about the Shungite is that it does not decrease the amount of energy that is coming into the phone or out of the phone. It doesn't block it. It doesn't absorb it. So we get a lot of people, I put your sticker on there and I'm still getting the measurements. Yes, you're getting the measurements, but there is not a device out there yet that can tell you that the field is attenuated, changed, because the torsion spin coming off of the way they wire the electric equipment is a reverse to what is biocompatible. And Shungite, because of the energy field that and it's linked to the quantum field, has such a powerful field rotating biologically compatible that when these Wi-Fi fields enter the Shungite field, they actually reverse spin. Okay, and that, so now it's biocompatible, but there's still a lot of energy coming off of that phone. You know, now the way that we went after it is, no, I don't want to be able to block those signals because then your phone's not working right. You can't hear. You'll take the sticker off or whatever, even if we could have done it. But with at least with the fact that it's rotating biologically correctly, it's not as damaging, but it's still a huge amount of energy coming off of there. And recently, because of what I found out about the 500% over what they're saying, that is scary because it's not, if they're doing that to the cell phone, what are they doing to the smart equipment? Your smart television, your smart refrigerator, your smart. You know, you think they're down at the SAR level? Not likely. You know, and nobody's yet done a test on those things. So there, again, it's a tremendous amount of energy coming at us. So what I've suggested to people is that because you can't be sure, we designed it for a level that was equivalent to the SAR limitations, not something 500% over it. So we're still attenuating that signal, but it's a lot of energy, unnatural energy entering into your bioelectromagnetic physical body. You know, so I'm telling people to add either a smart sticker or add a couple more of the S4 stickers, because the more Shungite you imbue into that energy field, the more natural it's going to be. You're not going to get, it's not going to be that awful thing. You're going to be getting healing energy from the Shungite, and but there's nothing safe about any of this crap. You know, there are ways to make it safer, but those power levels are just unacceptable.
Yeah, and I know Nancy doesn't, make direct plugs, but I'll go ahead and do it. The smart sticker that she's talking about is from cosmicreality.net for the really effective, excellent Shungite products that are provided there that provide this kind of protection the best you can find. Ultimately, as we know, of course, it's a biosphere threat, but on the individual level for your family and your household against harmful EMF and Wi-Fi, 3G and 4G, the smart stickers to deal with, with the smart meters that are being clamped onto everybody's homes. These are, demonstrated hazards as well. So anyway, just wanted to make that plug for cosmicreality.net. I hope you don't mind there, Nancy.
No, I appreciate it. And one of the things about what we did in our decision on how to operate was to be able to get affordable protection to people. I know that there are other things that can completely block or do a lot of other things to the signals, but we wanted to be able to make it affordable. and we've got our prices so that, for $10, you stick it on every electronics you've got. You're going to keep yourself, let's not say completely protected, but you're going to get, hold one. Jesus.
Tuesday, 1:19 p.m. Message deleted. End of messages.
I'm sorry, I can't think of something clever and amusing to say to cover that.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of, it's interesting that came through. I actually thought I had stopped that from, but I didn't. But it's interesting because just before we started the show, that company called me again. All right? And the guy's talking, I want to talk to you because I picked it up and hung up on him. All right? This is Alexis. Yeah, like I'll be dead and in my grave before I would have let that bitch in my house. You know what I'm saying? This is the intrusion that people are, my business. What are you, crazy? You're talking to somebody that is trying to shut you down. And they come back and do it again. No, people do not get this Alexis in your house, please. It monitors everything you say. Don't let me get on that, Michael.
Yeah, I saw that. There was a Facebook meme not too long ago. I'm going to approximate it, something like, our teenage son came in and said, that Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, this is back when Steve Jobs was alive, or maybe shortly after he passed, Mark Zuckerberg and Apple and Facebook are all listening in on every conversation we have. And then it says, I laughed, my wife laughed, Siri laughed, and Alexa laughed.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, it's a good old Alexa. I mean, Alexa can be hilarious if you want to ask her, goofy questions or, make her play competing music. My brother and sister and I had a hilarious time. But on the other hand, they're ubiquitous, omnipresent, unignorable. Makes you a little nervous when suddenly they jump in out of nowhere and you say, excuse me, who asked you?
Well, Siri, I don't use it normally, but I was sitting there and wanted to find something quick, so I asked Siri, look this up, and whatever she gave me was a bunch of crap, and I said, Siri, you're, and she went, that's not nice. Scared the crap out of me. I haven't used it since. I mean, it was like, whoa.
They have various, very human responses built in to keep you amused. For example, somebody told me that if you say, Siri, talk dirty to me, that Siri will say, gravel, mud, dirt, sand. I'll start to give you lists of various kinds of soil and gravel mixtures. Anyway, it's it's fun to be in the car and to be able to say, hey Siri, where's the nearest Starbucks? Without having to put your life in danger by picking up your phone and texting. But that's part of the price we're paying for all this convenience is the loss of privacy and having your brains fried while you're at it.
For no additional cost.
Yeah, for free. We'll fry your brain. Oh, this is funny. So, because I said that in the middle of this conversation, here's Siri on my laptop responding to my request of where's the nearest Starbucks. No. Sorry, can you try that again in fewer words? Because here's what Siri thought I said. This is creepy. I'm going to read this to you. And now if I say, hey Siri again, then she's going to say, yes, can I help you? But it's like, where's the nearest Starbucks in, out, without having to put your life in danger by picking up your phone and texting, but I'm going to use this party, the price we're paying. This is what Siri thought I was asking. She was very confused. It's as if I said, hey Siri, where's the nearest Starbucks I can go to without putting my life in danger from your toxic cell phones from Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg? And okay, here's Siri's response. Okay, here is your service response, and Siri says, I didn't catch that. Yeah, of course you didn't. Anyway, HAL 9000 is like, open the pod bay doors, HAL. Yeah, it's a long way from 2001. Anyway, so we're at 11:24 here in Crestone, Colorado, and I'm trying to flow on with our focus and concentration here. We could just segue into
does William have, I mean, he's here. Let's, what else would he like to talk about? We don't have to talk about specifically this because I'm sure he's into something interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here in Crestone because of the Elvis Project, meeting with Michael and some other people here. Let's see.
Now, were you as fascinated with, I don't know how old you are, but when Michael was explaining the spirituality of Elvis.
Yes.
And the way that Elvis had reached out to other people who were nobodies, in quotes,
right,
but telephone connections to talk about this. And then to look at, because I was there when it started up, and to know that this man, you kind of like accept it. Okay, he came in, he brought the sound of the black voice in with the white voice and created this amazing new phenomena that became rock and roll and just opened up a whole interesting connection to a vast amount of young people. Just because all of a sudden there's this, and you got the radio now and you got all these other ways but he became such a focal point, and some of these people that are Elvis's fans, they are really, I have a friend of mine that was just absolutely an Elvis fan, and to the point of going to Graceland, I don't know how many times, dozens and dozens of times, and I always thought, well, she's a little weird, until I realized that she was picking up on this spiritual connection that he was throwing out. I just found it fascinating.
Well, and that's what really attracts me to this as well, is from what I've seen and heard, Elvis had a very personal, private, guarded, and powerful spiritual life and interest in things that people, certainly in those days, and in the 1960s and 70s, the kinds of things he was interested in would have been considered sort of outrageously esoteric. Now, I think there's a much more of a bedrock of acceptance of these kinds of things. And I was, it's interesting. I was surprised in some ways and amazed, and in other ways, not surprised. He was really an innovator, not only in the things you described, but in his own spiritual interests. He was studying Yogananda and yoga and things of a very, very tangible, valid spiritual nature in the early 1960s. And he was a lover of the Bible and of conventional Christianity and spirituality, but he didn't stop there. He didn't allow himself to be controlled or dominated by any one dogma. I think he was an explorer. I think he had, from what I've heard, he had very astounding and powerful personal experiences of a spiritual nature that he just didn't know he didn't have an outlet for. He did not have, and that's why he reached out to people outside of his immediate circle, which was really there to protect him and to live off of him as much as anything else. And they certainly couldn't satisfy his interest in the kind of spiritual experiences and perspectives that he had. And that really interests me a lot, because I think there's so much potential for people in the world to themselves learn more with Elvis as a model. And I'm really, really curious about that. We don't have many opportunities to expand spiritual awareness or interests. In some ways, it's almost like politics. You pick your not your poison, but pick your direction in life, and you got to stay with that, and that's what spirituality is. And I think these days, with all the challenges that we're faced with, things like 5G, things like many, many things in this world that are do not bode well for our future collectively. And I think having Elvis as an example of someone who looked outside the ordinary, looked outside the normal, accepted what they felt and saw and experienced spiritually, is really a wonderful opportunity. So I'm really excited to see if we can make this happen.
And thank you for doing this, because I think there's a tremendous number of people who were fans of Elvis who really respected him, and if they know this about him, maybe they'll feel better about opening up to spirituality themselves.
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. That there is, Elvis's appeal is worldwide, first of all. And as we are delving into the material, and again, this is based on transcripts of hours of private, personal conversations that Elvis had with a very trusted inner circle, discussing things he couldn't discuss with anybody else. And his entourage, as William says, yeah, they were there to protect him, but they were also under specific orders from Colonel Parker, his manager, to keep the spiritual people away from Elvis, to keep spiritual material away from Elvis, because Elvis's expressed desire to possibly become a minister, or as he said, he confided to the Reverend Mother of Self-Realization Fellowship, Sri Dayamata, he expressed a desire to even become a monk. And her response to him was, Elvis, it seems that God intends you in this life to be Elvis Presley, not Brother Elvis. But the point is that the regime that he lived under, the entourage, were effectively a prison. That, yes, they provided company. He grew up an only child. He liked to be surrounded by people. And one of the conversations in the tapes, he says quite explicitly, he says, I have this need to connect with other people's inner beings and spiritual selves. And I can't get in that position. My career won't allow it. My management won't allow it. My friends won't allow it. And it's driving me crazy. He said, I'm going to end up a blundering fool if I don't solve this somehow, to be able to express and share and manifest this intense hunger he had for spirit. So it's a powerful story, and we who are involved in the project just have a feeling that as it unfolds, as we make this documentary, a lot of other influences and other consequences are already coming to the table day by day. It's because it's easy to overlook the influence of this man. He's a pop culture icon. Everybody knows who he is. They just know rough details if you're not an Elvis fan. But if you look at the influence of the man, it's massive. If Elvis had not come along, the unique phenomenon that he was at that time, he's credited in a recent HBO documentary with really being a key influence on the civil rights movement. That the merging of black and white culture, where suddenly white people were listening to black music in a way they never had before. And this is in the mid-1950s, just as the civil rights movement is really starting to have momentum. And then you have the massive cultural influence of the Beatles. And I'm sure John Lennon and Paul McCartney would be the first to tell you, no Elvis Presley, no Beatles. Just simply would not ever have happened. John Lennon would say, yeah, well, really, you go back to the original black musicians; those are the real guys who began all this. But between Little Richard and other great musicians like that, they would never have broken through the mainstream had it not been for Elvis. And rock and roll would not have happened. The Beatles wouldn't have happened. And when we're talking just recently in this conversation about Elvis studying yoga and the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, author of Autobiography of a Yogi, in the early 1960s, that's before the Beatles went to Rishikesh. Okay, that's a cultural landmark, a watershed event, where if you talk about fashion in the 60s, people who are into clothes and fashion and trace the history of fashion in the 60s and what 60s clothes looked like, it's a common demarcation point in the fashion industry. It's like, oh, well, there's before the Beatles went to India and there's after the Beatles went to India. I mean, I give that as just one small example. The cultural influence of Dylan and the Beatles and the whole countercultural movement of the 60s, which continues to roll out the influence of that. None of that would have happened had it not been for Elvis. So the fact that he was studying yoga and meditation before any of this became common is remarkable. And that was one of his fears. And he expresses it on the tape. He says, my fans are not ready to hear about this. It will not be good at this point. Most of the people who follow me in my music, they're not ready for this. They don't want to hear me talk about this. And so there's that factor as well. And then when we come to the late 60s, when Colonel Parker had gambling debts in Las Vegas that he couldn't pay, and the information is that to pay off his gambling debts to the mob in Vegas, he sold them Elvis's contract. And Elvis woke up one day to discover that he was basically a slave to the mob, enforced with threats against his family if he tried to break the contract. And, that leads us down a whole other rabbit hole. But the essential effect of it was that he was in even more of a prison for the last 6-7 years of his life. Anyway, a beautiful man, an amazing story, and we're really excited about bringing all of it out through these amazing tapes and transcripts of these conversations.
I want to say also, I just found a 5G map how to locate 5G towers. So that might be valuable to people. It's on the EMF Academy site. So it's 5G cell towers near me. So that's something that I think people need to know where how much 5G is being rolled out, where it is, if it's near them or not. So I think the more people are informed, the better. So I'm going to start using this.
Yeah, and here in southern Colorado, where we're coming from today, we're finding the same thing a lot of people are finding when the local telecom company will come in and say, hey, we're just installing an upgrade, not to worry. And a friend of ours who was knowledgeable said, oh, is that 5G? Is that 5G capable? Do I have 5G yet? She was just leading them on. And the guy says, oh yeah, it's not in yet, but we're making it, we're setting it up so you can get it. So essentially, they are putting in 5G capable equipment so that when the towers are rolled out in more remote areas, such as here in Crestone, the infrastructure will already be in place. And of course, they're being covertly installed in LED lights, on street lamps, as has been reported by our good friend Mark Steele.
Well, that's a little misleading. In actuality, the LED lights are part of the 5G weapon system.
Oh, that's reassuring.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, we can sugarcoat it so we don't sound like we're raving mad. But the reality is that all of this, it's not 4G technology. It's not telecommunications technology. It was designed by weapons experts. And when we have a weapons expert like Mark Steele, telling us about what the piece of electronics is actually made for, then, now you've got somebody who is on our side telling us what we're up against. And you can't just, because it's even harder to believe, well, no, it's a weapon system. It's designed on the same frequencies, the same basic equipment that they use to get crowds controlled. They wanted it on the battlefield. The problem with the battlefield is targeting, because you got one of these enormous pieces of equipment that's putting out this signal, but it's sort of like doing it, in a blast of, just over an area. What you want to be able to do is to actually target somebody or a group of people. It's also designed to see through foliage, even see through concrete. This is what it was all designed to do, and now the same technology is being put outside your yard, connected to other equipment that is dangerous enough. Okay? But the fact of the matter is that the LED lights are able to kill. And you listen to Mark and, you shake your head and you go, I think how do I get off of this planet? It's getting very dangerous. But, no, so technically, it's not just hiding the 5G. It is the 5G. It's a concerted effort to be able to put an electronic fence in that not only will keep you dumbed down, keep you physically fragile, so that if you even can get your brain around the fact that you're under attack, you don't have the energy or the ability to fight back. And then if they're really getting, you're sick of wherever you are, you people, well, then they can just kill you. And people got to understand this. As a matter of fact, let me just do something here for a second. I've got up This is from thelibertybeacon.com, and it's titled 5G Cell Phone Radiation, How the Telecommunication Companies Are Losing the Battle. I highly recommend it because it'll make you feel better, because it's listing there's a whole list that I'm not going to read through about all of the different things that are happening worldwide of humanity waking up and taking responsibility for their own reality. And the way that they led this off was with the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his September 24th talk to the United Nations General Assembly. And I just want to read what they say, okay? Because they say, he described the Internet of Things, smart cities, and AI as a giant dark thunder cloud lowering ever more oppressively over the human race, a gathering force reshaping the future of humanity over which the human race has no control and from which in the future there may be nowhere to hide. He asked if algorithms could be trusted with our lives and hopes, whether machines should be allowed to doom us to a cold and heartless future in an Orwellian world designed for censorship, repression, and control. He recalled the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and endorsed its ideals of upholding freedom of opinion and expression, the privacy of home and correspondence, and right to seek and impart information and ideas. He exhorted the academic committees, company boards, industry standard groups who are writing the rule book for the future, making ethical judgments and choosing what will or will not be rendered possible to find the right balance between freedom and control, between innovation, and regulation, between private enterprise and government oversight. He insisted that the ethical judgments inherent in the design of new technology must be made transparent to all, and that joint efforts must be made to agree on a common set of global principles to shape the norms and standards that will guide and develop the emerging technology. Now, what the hell is wrong with that? That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for them to, take down all their equipment and go someplace. We're asking to, let's be sane about this. And the people that are sane, the people like the people in Australia and their telecommunications, I think it's TBS, they decided that no, whatever we're doing is we've got to look at this again. Let's stop. What's the problem with stopping? What is this fanatical, get it in there, get it in there? That's what we got to be afraid of. Somebody wants it in without even consulting the concept of let's make sure it's safe before we do it. This is insane. And that's why he's calling it, that this is somebody trying to take over with control the future of the human race.
Yeah, to me, as you look at the arc of history, the back and forth battle between what you could loosely call, the oligarchs and the people. If you go back to ancient Greece, age of Pericles, it's the same story. Oligarchs and the people's council against, the haves and the have-nots, and Thomas Jefferson, just spells it right out for us and says, look, this is an endless battle. It goes back and forth, and it requires eternal vigilance on the part of the people to not lose their rights to the slow encroachment of moneyed interests that are motivated primarily by profit. And now we're seeing it play out, what looks like to me, on a potentially paradigm-shifting moment where the old battleground, where, like, for example, I'm kind of a student of Roman history, and you get somebody like Julius Caesar taking common cause with the people, the plebeians, betraying his patrician class, right, and taking common cause with the people. Well, then the pendulum swings back the other way, and then the oligarchs creep back in and they get control again. And if you look at the 60s, the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, all of the legislation that ironically came in, primarily under Richard Nixon. Nixon would be regarded today, the policies and legislation that was passed under him, he would be regarded by the Republican Party as what's their favorite word, a libtard. Nixon would be a flat out libtard, progressive social, because he was simply say, hey, let's actually put in some environmental protection. That's probably a good idea. And so now this pendulum has swung so far in the other way, and it's really not the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. They're both totally co-opted and controlled by the corrupt financial elite who've been, pulling the strings from behind the scenes for a very long time. But now with 5G, it's a game changer because it's a lethal global threat. It threatens everybody. And the agenda behind it in terms of a all-pervasive surveillance and control and weapon system it's just too naked and unignorable. It's the ultimate wake-up call. It's the blessing in disguise where everybody goes, holy crap, I think I can't bury my head in the sand any longer. And, that's certainly what we're seeing. There's some people who will just keep their heads buried in the sand. We're not going to wake up everybody. But I get the increasing perception that enough people are waking up, and that, there's going to be damage and deaths and tragedies, but that ultimately the people will prevail. Mother Earth will, God willing, please God, will prevail. And so I'm an optimistic guy by nature, but I think there's solid reason for hope.
Yeah, look at the Dr. Oz thing. I mentioned it last week. William, I don't know if you heard this, but Dr. Oz, the television persona there, he did on Facebook, ran an opinion poll on whether they did a town hall, a mock town hall on his TV show, and bringing in 5G into your town. Do you want it? And at the end of it, they took a vote of the people in the audience, and it was heavily in favor of yes, we want it. But then he put it up on Facebook, and he said, I'm going to keep this up for the next 24 hours. You people tell me what you want. And instead of it being mostly 5G, yes, 5G, it was 2-1 no. And there was 1,100 people that took that survey. So that's really impressive. And, that's where I see things are happening, that people are understanding, no. I don't even know what the details are, but no, I don't think I want it in here because they're hearing it.
If I could draw an analogy here that's understandable, there was a wonderful film that came out a few years ago called Gasland, and it was about fracking, basically, and all of the problems with that technology. And one of the things that came out of that research that the filmmaker did was that there's no laws for the fracking process. There's no regulations. So there's no way to approach the problems that fracking presents because there's no basis in the legislative world to approach it. It doesn't exist. It's a vacuum. And I think that there's a similar thing that's taking place with things like 5G, where there's no oversight and there's no bona fide position of, the government or the regulators, because there's a big vacuum. The technology is not defined. It's not understood in the regulatory world. So there's no laws against it or for it. It's just there. And you have things like the Cell Phone Act that Michael mentioned earlier that came about under the Clinton regime. So they slip in these kinds of laws that basically say, and the same with pharmaceuticals. You're not allowed to speak out against this and it's a law that has no basis in any kind of information or real world statistics or the actual harm or safety of a product. It's just, a blanket circumstance where you can't get there from here. You can't speak out against something because there's no law or no regulation that substantiates its safety or its efficacy. So, the public, of course, they're getting dumber. They have nothing to work with. They have no information or law or support from the government or the people who are supposed to, our government, the people who are supposed to protect us. They don't even have 5G rules or 5G laws or 5G codes. And so where do we start? Where does somebody from the public start other than their own initiative like this, rather than having, we should get the universities involved in this and, all the information should be known before they unroll a technology. But that's not how they do it. They unroll the technology first and say, well, can't catch me.
Well, this is where captive agencies come in. The Federal Communications Commission is supposed to be monitoring it, and they are a captive agency which is run by former telecommunications executives. And, they're there to steamroll the public and smooth the way for the completely, unimpeded rollout of the technology that's going to make the companies they used to work for very, very rich. Of course, they already are very, very rich. But it is something where at the local level, this is we're encouraging people, at the local level, we still have power. The federal level, in due course, in due time, will come around. You have things like this lawsuit where we have the Erin Brockovich firm on board, specifically attacking the act of the Clinton regime under 1996 that protects the telecommunications industry from being sued over health effects of Wi-Fi and cell phones. So, there is the long-term prospect for action at the federal level, but the real power, lies with you, with all of us in our communities, with our local town councils, with our, county commissioners, with taking civil suits for assault, such as Roy Broomhall. And again, you can, check out the 5G Crisis Summit.com for many excellent expert talks, particularly the one by Roy Broomhall. We're encouraging people to check out because it is a proven strategy for taking down 5G towers where they exist in your neighborhood and preventing the towers from being erected.
So let me jump in here, because there's a letter that was written by somebody to their city council, and the city council came back and said, "Yeah, I hear you. The mayor, I think it was. Yeah, I hear you that we've got a problem here, but you got to understand that federal and state law is preventing us from having any say in this." And immediately, people were saying that's not true. Don't let them, I got to do it because the feds and the state say that. No, that's not true. People got to understand that, first off, those very laws that they're trying to cite are under attack in law, in lawsuits, but it's going to take a while. They can hold, just like this delay tactic that the other guys use. The city councils can do the same thing. Well, we need a feasibility study. There's things they can do, but they've got to be prodded to do it and to understand it. The governments are not dead in the water unless they want to pass the buck.
Right, and that's what we saw happen in Taos, where the Taos County Commissioners were presented with a totally doable option. All they needed to do was to vote to say, all right, we were going to change the language in this land use regulation governing who could sign on to have carriers on various cell phone towers. Their own guy had previously testified that it was in response to 5G applications. It was all about 5G. At the county commissioner's hearing, with 300 people showing up to protest, nearly 1,000 signatures on a petition, all we asked was that simple thing you're describing, Nancy. We just said, look, ask for a delay. Don't open a back door and a streamlined path for rolling out 5G in Taos. Just put in a delay. Go back to the drawing board, look at the evidence that's been presented by the experts here, see if there aren't some safety measures that can be put in place, exercise your sovereign responsibility, your duty to protect the people of Taos, and just ask for a little delay here. Just don't vote this streamlined, back door for 5G into effect, please. And lo and behold, they went ahead and did it anyway. Those county commissioners, the makeup of that county commissioner is going to be changing rather shortly because of the outrage at that action. So action is being taken. There's a lot of successful. The vote didn't go our way in Taos, but it is going our way in many other places around the country and around the world. So that's where it can happen. That's how it can happen.
And the only way it's going to happen is that people become educated so that they can actually teach these people what the reality of the situation is, not what they're being told in its easy way out. Oh, I'm too busy to learn about this. I can't do it because the Fed's in it. No, darling, this is your family we're talking about.
Yeah, and just, go to 5G-know.com. We've got, it's one of many websites out there, and we share a lot of them with you. But it's the hard information, the huge amount of peer-reviewed science documenting all of this, 5G-know.com, and it's all there. And so we're coming up on our closing time here. I want to thank my co-host Nancy Hopkins, and especially our guest today, a special guest, my friend William Gazecki, noted filmmaker. Thanks, William, very much for coming on with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. A pleasure to be here. Anytime I can be of service in this regard, I'm available.
Great.
Appreciate you, William. Thank you.
All right, so God bless us, everybody. This is Michael Henry Dunn for Radio 5G with a joint project of Cosmic Reality Radio and the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution in Crestone, Colorado. We'll see you next time.